Good afternoon, everyone. Can we bring our voices down for a second? Hi, can I get a wave? Good afternoon. It's nice to see you all here. Thank you so much for coming. Today at the Iowa City Public Library, we have a very special program presented by a naturalist from Johnson County Conservation, and her name is Sydney Algreen, and she's here to talk to you about some native animals from Iowa. Can you give her a nice warm welcome and say hi?
Hi. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the library, and thanks for having me today. I was so excited when Casey invited me because I heard that you guys have been learning about superheroes and superpowers all summer in the library reading program. Is that true? Yeah? Well, I wanted to teach you about, because where I come from and in my job, I learn all about plants and animals that we have here in Iowa, and especially the ones that are in your own backyard. At Kent Park, at Chia Fen, at different prairies, even some places in Iowa City. Usually I'm out at Kent Park and I have groups come to me and we go outside and look for some of these animals. But today I brought some of them in to show you guys. So we'll get to those in a little bit. But first I have a question for you guys. Think about all the different kinds of animals that you might find here in Iowa, and think about things that make them different from us. Animals have special characteristics or adaptations that help them live outside in the wild on their own. And those things we can kind of think of as superpowers, animal superpowers. So for example, the other day I was at Kent Park, and we have a big bird blind. And I was out there watching birds, and I realized that birds can fly. It's a pretty easy thing to realize, right? Can humans fly? No. Isn't that an awesome superpower that animals have? A cool adaptation to help them out in life. So please raise your hand and let me know, are there any other cool things that animals can do that humans necessarily can't do that could be a superhero power? Yeah. Drink honey from flowers, collect nectar, right? Butterflies have really long tongues that they stick out. They're called proboscises, and they can suck on tiny, tiny flowers that we could never even think about doing. What a super cool power that animals have. What else?
Fish that can stay underwater.
Definitely. Fish can breathe underwater. We definitely can't do that. Frogs can swim underwater and stay there a really, really long time. Even ants and worms can stay underwater for a long time. That would be super cool if we could do that.
Don't drown.
They don't drown. What are some other cool animal powers?
Chameleons and some other types of animals can change color to blend in with their surroundings.
Most definitely. Some animals, like chameleons, and even one animal that we have here in Iowa, can change the color of its skin to blend into its surroundings. What's that called? When an animal blends into its surroundings. Camouflage. Very good. Awesome. We'll take one more really super cool animal power. Way in the back. Yes, sir? They can crawl on rocks? Walls. Definitely. And I have one animal who's going to do a couple of the things that you guys mentioned today, so I'll bring them out in a little bit. The group of animals that I want to talk to you guys about and share with you, they all have these really, really cool different adaptations and powers, super cool superhero powers that help them live outside. And the group of animals that we're going to be learning about today is called reptiles. Can you guys say that with me? Reptiles. It's not reptiles, it's reptiles with an H. H-E-R-P-T-I-L-E-S. Reptiles does include the group of animals called reptiles. It also includes amphibians. And the reason those two are grouped together into reptiles is because they have some similar characteristics. Today I'm going to bring out some of those animals. We'll take a close look at them. And I want you guys to share with me things that you've learned about these animals or that I will teach you today that make them really cool and could kind of be considered their superhero powers, all right? Yes, friend?
Why
Oh, so cool. Spiny soft shell baby turtles. Man, I'd love to see that. All right, friends, so the first group of animals we're going to be talking about in the big group reptiles is amphibians. Please raise your hand and tell me something that you know about the group amphibians. Yes?
Well, I mean, I know, I'm not sure if all amphibians have this, but I know that frogs have this. They kind of like, if their skin gets like polluted, like the rest of the body gets polluted.
Uh-huh. Very good. That's a really good point and something that makes amphibians really unique and really special, unlike almost any other animal. Amphibians actually absorb things through their skin. It's one thing that helps them stay underwater for a really long time because they can absorb oxygen through their skin. But that also means they can absorb the things that are on our hands too, and the things that are in water or on land that they're walking around. I do have some frogs with me that we'll take a look at in 1 second, and we'll leave them in their container. One reason why we'll leave them in their container is because if we were all touching them with our hands, maybe you guys have sunscreen, maybe you have bug spray, hand sanitizer, leftover lunch. All of that stuff, if we touch the frogs, could get on their skin, and maybe it wouldn't bother them at all, but maybe it would make them feel not so good. And we want them to be happy and living good lives, so we won't touch them. So we know that amphibians have this really cool skin. How does amphibian skin usually feel? What's it feel like? Slimy, right? It's wet and slimy. That's because they need to breathe through their skin, so they have to keep it wet. What else do we know about frogs or amphibians? They live in wet places. One thing about amphibians, even in their name it says it, amphibian means two lives. All amphibians start their life where?
In water.
In water, very good. Every amphibian will lay its eggs in water. The eggs will hatch and turn into what? Sage?
What? They can also, like tadpoles, like let it grow and then they
Yeah.
tail and then they lose it.
Yes, certainly. I brought a book with me. Where's my book? I checked out this book from my library in North Liberty. I get lots of books from the library to learn about different things, so you guys should definitely check out the books here. And this book is so handy because it has the amphibian lifecycle right here for us to see. All amphibians have to lay their eggs in water, whether you're a toad, a salamander, or a frog. Then those eggs hatch, they turn into tadpoles. The tadpoles start to grow legs, and eventually they lose their tail and they come out on land and they're in the adult form. But all amphibians will go back to the water to lay their eggs to start over, okay? Anything else that you know about amphibians that's really cool?
Okay.
Joey.
I think they're considered a class, and I can't remember what animal phylum that class is in.
Okay.
I studied it, and it's in an animal phylum that belongs to us.
Yep, I learned about that stuff a long time ago. I don't remember all the names either. They get confusing. Ah. Frogs and toads are immune to the sting of different, oh, cool. I didn't know that. Thanks for sharing. I learn lots of new things from you guys because you guys read books, you learn about it in school, and who watches Wildcrats here? Yeah? You learn lots of cool stuff on Wildcrats. Well, I want to bring out my first special guest, friends. But before I do, I need to make sure that you guys are all going to be good listeners and kind visitors to my guest, okay? So I'm going to ask all of you to sit crisscross applesauce, hands in your lap. That way people behind you can see and your hands won't be pointing or touching. And then I'm going to ask you, whenever I bring out one of our special guest friends, so that they're comfortable, I'm going to ask you to keep your voices off, okay? The first animal I'm going to bring out is this guy right here. This is a gray tree frog. They're common all over, and because we've had so much rain lately, I've been hearing these guys calling all the time in the evening when it starts to get dark out. So tonight when you go home, listen out your windows. I live in North Liberty, so in the middle of a city, and I still hear them. And you'll find them here in Iowa City as well. You'll find them pretty much anywhere. One cool thing about these guys, they can change the color of their skin. Right now you see it as a gray frog. Why would this frog want to look gray?
It's the frogs camouflage because if they don't camouflage, sometimes they get eaten by predators, and the camouflage is a really good defense, and so that animals can't see them.
Yes, definitely.
The animals will give up and then they will walk away.
Certainly. This frog changes its skin color to camouflage and hide from predators. What a super cool superpower. Imagine if you were able to blend into the wall or the carpet or blend into your bed in the morning, and then you wouldn't have to go to school sometimes maybe, you know? It's kind of like becoming invisible. Wouldn't that be sweet if humans could do that? All right. The frogs that I have with me, they don't look gray. I'm going to bring out the container and I'll walk around in front of you all so you can see it. You'll get a chance in the end to see them up close and personal, but right now I'll just walk around. But remember to sit crisscross applesauce, hands in your lap with your voices off so our special guests feel comfortable. All right. There are 2 gray tree frogs in this container. They're on this end.
I see 2.
Friends, remember your voices should be off. I will bring it to everyone while walking around so that you can see.
Found them both. I can only see 1.
From where you're sitting, friends, you might not be able to see all the animals, but remember, like I said, you'll get a chance in the end to see them. What color are these frogs right now? What color are our gray tree frogs? Way in the back, yes ma'am. Brown. Their bellies are definitely brown, and this one, pretty cool. You can see it's red, bright, yellow, bright yellow legs right there. You can tell with this frog actually whether it's male or female by the color on its throat, and both of these have a grayish brown throat. That lets me know that they're male. If you look at this one's back, what color is it? Green. That's so it can blend in with the plants in here. It's camouflaged with those plants. Pretty cool. And you'll notice in this container, I have a wet paper towel on the bottom. I've also got water in there for them because they need to stay nice and wet. Remember, they breathe through their skin. They need nice wet skin so that they can breathe. What questions do you have for me about these frogs? Yes.
Why are they so tiny?
Why are they so tiny? This is as big as they're going to get. These guys are full grown right now. They're usually between 1 to 2 inches long in length. And I did have a baby one that I found this morning. It was about that big, about half the size of this. So this is all the bigger they're going to get. But we have some frogs in Iowa, especially the ones I've been catching and hearing lately, that are no bigger than my thumb. That's as big as they get. Full grown. Yeah.
How many frogs do you have there?
Great question. How many frogs do I have? These frogs I found this morning at Kent Park, and I will actually let them go when we get back to the park. I just wanted to bring them in and show you an example of an animal that uses camouflage, but I'll let them go. So right now at Kent Park, I've been seeing this frog. We've got big bullfrogs. We've got tiny cricket frogs that sound like when you bang two marbles or two rocks together. We have chorus frogs. We have toads, which is an amphibian like a frog. And I think we have one more. Maybe that's all. So we have about 5 or 6 different kinds of frogs at Kent Park. And you guys are welcome to, even if you have a pond in your backyard, you can take an aquarium net and go down there and try and catch frogs. I do that all the time.
What?
Yeah.
Didn't you say there was 3 frogs in there?
There are only 2. I had a third one, but I let that one go this morning.
Did you know what gender it was?
The other one was a female. Yeah.
He's not sitting crisscross applesauce.
Between a frog and a toad? That's a great question. These guys are frogs, and they, if you look closely at their backs, do they have many bumps? Big bumps? They're smooth. They have smooth backs. Toads, I have a picture of one, have big bumps on their backs. And they only go to visit water when they have to find a boyfriend or a girlfriend and lay their eggs. That's the only time they're really in water. But I see these guys a lot of times when I walk my dog at night crossing sidewalks. They sometimes want to burrow into your parents' plants too. They are. That's one superpower that these toads have. Friends over here, can you guys keep your voice down so everyone else can hear me?
He's not sitting crisscross applesauce.
He's sitting crisscross applesauce. I think he's okay. All right. Toads have a special line of protection, a special power that they have. Those big bumps back behind their eyes, they release this poisonous, bad-tasting liquid. If you ever see a dog bite it, they'll spit it out really quick because it tastes really, really, really bad. It would take a lot of toads to actually kill a human or a dog because they don't have very much poison. It's not that bad. But after a while, it just gets to taste really bad, so things don't like to eat them. Okay. Like rotten eggs, you think? One more question about frogs or toads or other amphibians. Yes, in the back. Friend, can I have you go sit back there, please? Thank you. I'm sorry, what was that? I don't know. I've never tested that out. It's a good question. Okay, friends, we are going to move on to our next group of animals. If you have other questions, think about them, stick them in your pocket, and then you can ask me afterwards, okay? Okay, what do you want to share? Oh, okay, you can go potty. Okay, so we learned a little bit about amphibians and their cool powers. The next group we're going to talk about, remember in the big group of reptiles, is a group called reptiles. Raise your hand and share with me some of the cool things that reptiles have that make them have superpowers. They can climb on walls. Snakes are really good climbers, believe it or not. That's one thing with my frogs. Maybe they'll jump up later and we'll see them climb up. They have sticky feet. What else do we know?
They can get new skin.
Yeah, they shed their skin. That's how they get bigger. And I brought some snake sheds that I can share with you guys. These came from the snakes that I have at Kent Park. When a reptile wants to get bigger, amphibians actually do this too. It's just harder to find since it's usually wet. They shed their skin. And when it first comes off, it's kind of wet and sticky. and then eventually it dries up. This came from one of our fox snakes at the park. It's cool to look outside and try and find them and see how big the snake might have been. Okay. What else do we know about reptiles that makes them really cool? Yes?
Some reptiles, like snakes, they don't have any feet.
Yeah, some reptiles don't have any feet, and guess what? They're still really fast. Some are probably faster than us.
Some reptiles, their skin looks slimy, but it's actually really dry.
Yes, most reptiles, in fact, have really dry skin. It's not slimy like some people think. It just might look shiny and slimy. What else do we know about reptiles? Yes?
Some reptiles have big teeth.
Have big teeth? Yeah. Some reptiles have big teeth for chomping and biting, like alligators and crocodiles. Do we have alligators and crocodiles in Iowa? Nope. No alligators or crocodiles that live in Iowa unless they're at a zoo. Yeah, in the back. They all have scales. Very good. That's one thing that makes reptiles different from any other animal. They're covered in scales, even turtles. Okay, friends, I think I'm going to bring out my first reptile to talk about. Remember, I want you all to sit crisscross applesauce, hands in your lap, and turn your voices off. The next animal I'm going to bring out is a reptile, and it's one that we have at Kent Park. The reason I'm able to have this animal is because someone tried to keep it as a pet. And most turtles in Iowa are actually protected by law that you can't have them as pets, okay? So someone tried to keep this as a pet, and the DNR found out, and they took it and they gave it to a museum to use for educational purposes. And that was in Davenport. Then that museum closed, so they asked me to take care of that turtle because they knew I'd teach lots of people about it, just like you guys. And this turtle, we have a small population that lives at Kent Park, so it's really special that we have one today because most people will never ever get to see it in their whole life, okay? I'm going to bring the turtle out, and I want you all to take a close look at it. Sometimes he's kind of squirmy and wiggly, so really important that you guys are nice and quiet, okay? Once everyone shows me that they're sitting crisscross applesauce with their hands in their lap and their voices off, I'll know that you guys are ready to meet my special guest. I want you also to remember that the animals I have with me today, they aren't pets. I don't have names for them. I don't play with them. I take care of them and make sure they have a good home, and then I use them to teach people about Iowa's animals, okay? I'm not sure how long he'll cooperate with me. We'll have to see. This is an ornate box turtle. It gets its name because of the special shell that it has. And as you notice, you can see its legs and its neck really well right now. Those are all scales. Remember, all reptiles are covered in scales. One thing that you notice about turtles, they have a what? They have a shell. Why do turtles have shells? Yes, sir, in the green.
So then predators can't eat them because when they do, they just want to spit it out because they eat the shell.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes sea turtles, sometimes that's their defense of sharks.
Yeah, definitely. Turtles have shells to protect themselves so that other animals can't eat them. And this turtle is giving me a sign right now. See how his head is sticking out really far and he's moving his neck over to this side? That's a sign that he's unhappy, especially when he rears back his head. So I'm going to put him back in his container because we want these animals to be really happy, and he's not happy right now. going to grab some hand sanitizer. Unfortunately, he must be not very well at traveling because every time I bring him anywhere, he always goes to the bathroom in his travel container, and then he's really stinky and smelly. So, all right. I brought some different turtle shells to show you guys. Turtle shells are really, really, really cool. This is something special that no other animal has. And do you think turtles can ever walk out of their shell and go pick up a new one? No. Their shells grow with them just like your bones grow with you. So if you all bend over and feel your backbone, lean over, or feel it coming down from your neck. Yeah. That's the bone that helps form the turtle shell. Then if you feel your ribs, you can feel your individual ribs, where a turtle's shell is formed from its backbone, and then its ribs growing together. Instead of being separate, they grow together. So we can see on this side the backbone of the turtle and the shell, the ribs that make their shell. That's why it's really important, especially when you find a big snapping turtle like this maybe crossing the road. We should never pick up turtles by their tails because that can actually break their backbone inside their shell. If you bend their tail the wrong way, it can break their backbone because they can't really move that or wiggle around. It's connected. Okay? This comes from a really big turtle, a snapping turtle. This small one comes from a box turtle like the one you guys just got to meet. And I would have showed you on him if he was having a better day. But box turtles get their name because of the bottom of their shell has a door hinge, and the bottom actually lets them close their shell completely when they're really scared so that nothing can get its fingers inside. If we look at this turtle, he's got the top shell and the bottom shell still attached. There's no hinge right here that would allow him to close up his shell. So an animal like a raccoon or a coyote or a fox could easily get his tail, his legs, his arms if they wanted to. On a box turtle like the one you just met, they don't have that. They close up, so they're all protected. One cool thing about these shells, you can actually see where the scales are. Remember, all reptiles are covered in scales. These things are scales that grow and protect the bone, kind of like your skin grows and protects you. That same thing happens with turtles as well. Okay, what questions do you have for me about turtles? Right now, friends, I want questions, not stories. So things that start with who, what, when, where, things like that.
Isn't it illegal to take snapping turtles?
Snapping turtles actually have a very small season where you can go out and collect them, but most turtles in Iowa are protected where you can't collect them at all.
So why do you think that the turtle you showed us is having a bad day?
I think that he's having a bad day because of the signals that his body movements gave me. If you think about when you're upset or when you see someone who's mad, you can tell by looking at their facial expressions, right? They're probably not smiling. They might put their hands on their hips or cross their arms. That turtle, when it's upset, it moves, stretches out its neck, moves its head from side to side, rears its head back, and that lets me know that it's not very happy and I should put it back to be respectful.
Where did you get those shells?
These shells all came from different places. We actually have permits that we have to carry around when we carry all this stuff that says it's okay for us to have that. The state approves that, the DNR office does. But if you were just going out on your own and you found a turtle shell like this, you wouldn't be able to pick it up and take it home. You have to have one of those permits. So we're able to find things on the road. Sometimes we find dead turtles, and then we take their shells and use them for programs. Sometimes people give us shells that they found, and sometimes we just find shells outside. This shell, one of our employees actually found at Kemp Park last fall when they were out there doing some work in one of the prairies. Yes, ma'am.
How did you learn that when the turtles get mad, they turn their heads?
How did I learn that when turtles get mad, they move their heads? I had to read a lot about these turtles when I went to school. So, friends, when I was your age, I liked to go outside and catch bugs and go swimming and go fishing and canoeing and all of that stuff. So I decided when I went to college that I was going to study the plants and animals that we have here in Iowa. So I read papers and books, and I went out into the field and I collected samples, and I sat there and I observed these animals, and that's how I learned about when turtles aren't happy. Yes?
I know why you never hold the turtle's tail. You never ever do that because maybe it'll really hurt the turtle, and it might, I don't know, if you like shake it, it might break off.
Mm-hmm.
And, the proper way to hold the turtle when it's alive, you always have to hold like on the edges of the shell, and then like put your hand on the bottom, and you lift it up and you put it somewhere like back in the river.
Yeah, definitely. One other thing we haven't talked about with turtles that makes them kind of cool, especially the big snapping turtles. Turtles don't have any teeth, but it's called a snapping turtle for a reason, right? Because it can snap. Full-grown snapping turtles can actually bite off your fingers if you're not careful around them. That's why I just give them plenty of space. But what turtles have is what we call a beak, similar to the beak on a bird. And they use that, it's a front part of their mouth, to bite down on things and break them. And I think I may have a snapping turtle skull here with me. This is the skull from a snapping turtle. This is the part that goes on the top. You can see the holes for its eyes. No teeth. But you can see right here it's got this flat portion. That's where its beak is. And they actually have pieces of scales that grow up around there and cover it and protect it, protect their bones, and then that's what they use to cut up their food when they're eating. And they have really strong, especially snapping turtles, really strong jaw muscles so they can snap really, really hard. Do you have a story or a question? Okay, what's your question?
I have two. One is how hard is it to break a shell? Like, how hard could it be to break that shell?
Do you mean me as a person? If I were to take the shell, how hard would it be for me to break it? Or as a turtle outside?
When's the time that it can break? From something?
When the turtle's still inside of it?
Like anytime, anyway it can break.
Okay. There are some animals that are specially adapted for eating turtles, so their shell doesn't always protect them, but it does a pretty good job. There are some birds, and even raccoons have figured this out. They'll take the turtle up really, really high. If they're a bird, they'll fly above ground, drop it, and the shell will break, and then they'll eat the turtle inside. Raccoons, I've actually seen them do this even with teeny tiny turtles. They just bang them on things, rocks, until the shell breaks open. So depending on how old the turtle is and how big it is, depends on how that shell could break. But there are animals who will break it. You had a second question. What was it?
And also, how can the turtles not be in there? How can like when they're dead? How
how could they come out and
Sure.
have the
Friends, most of these shells that don't have the turtles in them, what's happened is that either bugs or other animals have eaten all the inside parts. Or sometimes what we do when we find a dead turtle, we'll take it, we'll set it under a barrel, and then we'll leave it there for a few days, and when we come back, bugs like beetles and ants and other larvae things have bored into it and eaten all the meat stuff. Sometimes we find parts of their arms or their head, but they're just really fragile and hard to keep together besides the snapping turtle because those are a bit bigger. All right. One other thing I want to talk to you guys about with turtles that makes them pretty cool. Depending on the shape of their shell, we can learn a lot from turtles. So this turtle right here, a snapping turtle, lives in water most of the time. Most all its life, in fact, snapping turtles rarely come out of the water except if they want to lay their eggs or something like that. The bottom of a snapping turtle shell looks like this. It's not that big, and it connects kind of like that. That's a clue that tells me this turtle probably spends most of its time in the mud because it doesn't need as much protection for its belly. If we look at this turtle, the bottom, it's got a lot bigger surface, right, to protect that skin and stuff underneath. So that tells me that this turtle probably spends some time outside of the water crawling around. The next thing that can help us figure out where a turtle lives is looking at the shape of the shell. Look at all three of these shells. And tell me some differences that you see. What do you notice about the differences in shape of these turtle shells?
Well, that turtle shell is smaller than the other turtle shells.
This one's much smaller, right? That's true. What else do you notice? Yeah.
that big, the snappy turtle shell has big hedge points. That the medium sized one has points but not that sharp, and the small one just has like a smooth curve.
Just has a smooth curve. Which shell looks more round? You can point to one. The small one, right? That tells me, because this shell is so round, like half of a bowling ball or something, that tells me that this turtle spends most of its time outside of water. It doesn't need to be flat and streamlined to swim really, really quickly, okay? If you ever come along a turtle shell in the outdoors and you want to figure out where it was living or where maybe you should put it, take a look at the shape and size, the bottom part of its shell, to figure out, is that turtle spending most of its time in the water, like our snapping turtle, or does it spend most of its time on land, like this turtle, like our box turtle? All right. I've got so much stuff out here right now. Okay, our last group of animals we're going to talk about, friends, is one that people aren't always as comfortable with, okay? When I bring out this animal, this time it's really, really, really important that you all be nice and calm and quiet, because this animal is really shy and it'll want to go back into its carrier if we're being loud, okay? So when I bring it out, please sit crisscross applesauce with your hands in your lap. This animal I know some people might be afraid of as well, so I'm just going to stand here in the front of the room. I won't bring it out into the audience in case you guys aren't comfortable with it. I'll just stand right here in the front. And then in the end, if you want to take a close look at it, we can do that. We're going to do the same thing with this animal. When I bring it out, I want you guys to take a close look at it, and then we'll think about some of its cool adaptations or some of its cool superhuman powers. You guys are doing a great job of sitting calmly and quietly. Make sure you keep that up. This is a snake. It's very common to Iowa. It's called a fox snake. It gets its name because when it's scared, its first instinct is not to bite. The first thing it'll do is take its tail and move it really quickly, shake it really quickly against something like leaves or rocks, and that makes a rattling sound. A lot of people confuse this snake for a rattlesnake, but this one is not poisonous. It just pretends to be a rattlesnake. Why would you want to pretend to be a rattlesnake? Yeah. Definitely. Other animals know to avoid that rattle sound, even humans, right? So when this snake does that rattle sound, people know and animals know to leave it alone because they think it's poisonous. If you've ever learned about monarchs and viceroy butterflies, same thing there. This one just pretends to be a rattlesnake instead of a monarch butterfly. So if that doesn't work and it does get picked up by maybe a skunk or maybe a raccoon or a fox or something, it will musk. And many snakes musk. That means that it releases a really bad smelling liquid. It smells so terrible, you never want to smell it. It kind of smells like a fox. Foxes don't smell very good, believe it or not. So it'll release this really bad smelling liquid, and then if an animal picks it up or smells that, it'll want to drop it right away because it doesn't taste good and it doesn't smell very good. So that's how it gets its name. This snake hardly has any teeth. It's got some in the back of its mouth, and they're pretty small. So it doesn't eat by biting its prey. What it does, and you can kind of see it doing it around my arm, snake is a constrictor. And that means that it coils around its food, it suffocates it, and then swallows it whole. That's one reason why we can use fox snakes for programs to show people, because they're pretty docile. As you can see, this snake is pretty calm. And they're not likely to bite because they're constrictors, and they use those other defense mechanisms to scare people away. This snake feeds about once a month, usually. And what kinds of things do you think a snake of this size could eat? Yeah.
I have a different question. Skunks like stinky smells.
Skunks like stinky smells?
So if it believes that stinky smell, what happens to the skunk?
That's a good question. He said that skunks don't mind stinky smells, which is good because they're pretty stinky. So what happens when an animal tries to be stinky around a skunk? Does it work?
No.
I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't think that many skunks would eat a snake very often, but maybe. So what are some things that you think this snake might eat?
Actually, I have a different question.
Okay.
Is it the same snake that peels off the skin you just showed us?
We have two snakes at Kent Park. Both are fox snakes. Both are about the same size. So that skin came from this one or the other one. I don't remember which. The reason why I brought this snake in particular is because our other snake was getting ready to shed. And snakes have a really cool way of telling you that. Remember, they're reptiles, so they're covered in what? Scales. They even have a scale over their eye. They never, ever have to blink. When they sleep, they never close their eyes because they have a scale over it. So I know when a snake is getting ready to shed because that scale over its eye gets really cloudy. It gets loose and cloudy, and that we call going into opaque because you can't see through the scale anymore. It's cloudy. Our other snake that we have was going into opaque. It was getting ready to shed, so I brought this one instead. Okay. Back to my question. What do you think this snake eats? Yes?
Mice or baby mice or something like that?
Definitely. That's what I feed this snake most often, mice. But in the wild, this snake will eat any kind of small rodent, a mice, a vole, maybe a small chipmunk. It will also eat things like birds and bird eggs because it's a very, very good climber. And if you look at its skin, this is one of those animals that uses camouflage for protection. It would rather remain hidden than get into some kind of confrontation. So if you think of this snake climbing up a big tree, notice how its skin kind of looks like bark, depending on the tree. Its skin blends in with the bark, and that really helps it because one of its favorite food is birds and bird eggs. It's also been known to eat things like frogs as well. Basically anything it can get its hands on. It doesn't have hands, right? Get its body wrapped around. This animal won't eat me because it knows what can fit in its mouth and what can't fit. But that's another cool point about snakes. How are their mouths different than other animals? Batman? You may get a chance to touch the snake in the end depending on how much time we have. But what can snakes' jaws do that are really cool unlike most other animals? August? Okay, let me know if you remember. Yes, in the back. They can actually unhinge their jaw and swallow things whole. And I have a picture of a snake doing that right here. That's how big their mouths can get. Friends, remember that you need to sit calm and quietly so that our guest feels comfortable. It looks like it's swallowing a bird. I can see the feathers right there. Someone in the audience made an observation about this snake. They noticed that its tongue kept sticking in and out. And the snake's not sticking its tongue out at you. It's not going. What do you think the snake is doing when it sticks its tongue out? Oh, lots of smart people. Let's see. Yes? It's smelling. How cool would that be if we could stick our tongues out to smell? Pretty awesome, right? It also has nostrils, but it uses those just for breathing, not for smelling. Friends, I need you to sit crisscross applesauce facing me. Voices off, please. Thank you. Are there any other cool things that you think you know about snakes that make them different or that give them superpowers?
They can grow over 10 feet.
Some snakes can grow over 10 feet, and we do have snakes in Iowa that can get that long. They can get really big. This snake is about full grown, so it's not going to get much bigger. Except when I feed it, then it gets a little chubbier. But other than that, it stays pretty small. How old is this snake? I'm not sure how old this snake was. It was there when I got here, so I think maybe it's about 10 years old. Snakes, when you have them in captivity, can live quite a while, but outside they usually don't live that long, maybe 10 to 12 years. Some snakes can go a whole year without eating, though, which is pretty cool. They can survive that long on little amounts of food. All right, guys, I'm going to take a few questions now. You can ask questions about any of the animals. I'll take questions for maybe 2 minutes, and then we'll have a chance for you to get a better look at some of these animals and touch the snake if you want to. But if you guys are going to touch the snake, I need you to show me that you are respectful and that you can follow instructions to make sure this snake is comfortable. So you should all still be sitting crisscross applesauce with your voices off. Yes. Once everyone's voices are off, I will continue. Okay. What is your question?
Was the snake clinging onto you because
I think so. Yep. He's pretty chilly. One thing we didn't talk about with reptiles and amphibians, they're cold-blooded, right? So they need other things to warm their bodies up, like the sun or like me, and that's why I think he's wrapping around me, because I'm a little bit warmer than the regular temperature. And if you get a chance to feel him, you'll feel he's a little bit chilly. I don't know if this is a girl or a boy. Some snakes you can tell by special scales on their belly, but this snake I can't tell unless I went inside and looked at it, and that just seems painful and something that I don't need to do to our snake. So I don't know whether it's a boy or a girl. Tell me later, okay? Yes?
Well, I have a question and a comment. It's kind of about all amphibian, it's kind of about reptiles.
Okay.
No way, just comment.
Okay.
Actually, it's just like one kind of superpower, tiny, a little bit.
Friends over here, I can't hear my friend in the background, so I need you to please sit quietly, okay?
That is, I think it's pretty crazy. I'm not sure if it's a lizard or a salamander, but it's like, I think there's this huge Japanese like lizard or salamander that I think is as big or bigger than a grown man.
Oh, wow. That would be cool. We do have some big salamanders that live in the U.S. Some people call them hellbenders because they're so big, but we don't really have those in Iowa. All right, guys, I will take one more question. I'm looking for questions, not stories, okay? Yes, sir. Yes. Yeah, I watch this guy eat whenever I feed it. It's pretty interesting to watch. I feed this snake frozen mice that I warm up to room temperature. So I don't ever feed it live mice, which makes it a lot more pleasant to watch. But it would eat live mice if I fed them to him.